Here's where we are. We have the fastest growing economy in the world. The world. The world. Look, here's where we are. We have the fastest growing economy in the world. The world. The world.
Okay, folks, welcome to GAMcast for June the 9th, 2022. Beautiful sunny. Actually, it's not. It's sort of cloudy day. It was sunny. Anyway, in Atlanta, I hope you're having a good time where you are. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about Biden. We're going to talk about January 6th. We're going to talk about the Defense Production Act, Joey Behar, a bunch of other things. Starting off the show there with the President of the United States on Jimmy Kimmel last night. We have the fastest growing economy in the world, and I did not put that in there. He actually said the world, the world, the world. The economy shrank last quarter by 1.5%. You know that because you follow podcasts like this one, and you know that. But President apparently of the United States doesn't know that. So anyway, by the way, just for those of you who are tuning in, if the economy shrinks this quarter, it will be known as a recession. A recession technically is 2 consecutive quarters of shrinkage of your economy. So he's up there, Kimmel. He can't, I think he's given a press conference on like 179 days. And there he is with Kimmel lying. I've got one more bit about Biden. I'm trying to think if I want to do the bit about Biden and then get to January 6th, because you really do need to know about January 6th because the hearings start tonight at 8 o'clock. I've told you before, we will be live streaming it. So if you want to tune in, it's going to be about around 7:40. Probably going to start around 7:45 tonight, so I can get in and give people an intro about what January 6th is. I think I'm just going to go ahead and start in the January. No, let's do Biden because actually it'll set it up well. So Biden was up there with Jimmy Kimmel, and he had this to say about the media environment in which he finds himself. Now, I want you to understand, in fact, if you're watching on YouTube, let me go ahead and do this. Biden's approval rating. I wrote, if you go over to our Substack page, I got so many pages now. So we got the podcast. If you're getting this by podcast, you can listen, watch us on YouTube. We've also got a Substack page, GreatAmericanMail.substack.com. One of the articles we put up there, I think several months ago, was about how the media and the polling industry was propping up Biden's polls. And I wrote in there, they will never let him go below 40%. And again, very, very happy to be proven wrong, ladies and gentlemen. I'm looking, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you're looking at it too. You're seeing the current Real Clear Politics average approval rating for Joseph R. Biden is 39.5%. Anyway, I encourage you to go read that article because it'll tell you a couple of ways in which polls are rigged to hurt Republicans and help Democrats. But I can tell you the fact that, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you if we get new listeners all the time. So I'm looking at the Quinnipiac poll that came out yesterday. It has him at 35%. Okay, it's obvious it's awful, but I'm looking at it, and it's a poll of registered voters. Now, what do you think the poll of likely voters is? It's probably like 33%. So what they'll do is they'll push out the registered voters poll to help him look a little bit better than he is. But I'm very surprised to see Biden go below that 40% threshold. So that could be a harbinger of something to come. Anyway, back. Let's go do January 6th. So I'm going to pull this article up here. If you want to go over to our Substack page, you can pull up this article, and it will give you a very good breakdown of what you're going to see from the January 6th committee tonight. Now, January 6th, for the Democrats, it's really 3 things, but the 2 big things that you're going to probably see tonight, I don't know they're going to bring in a third or potentially a fourth thing. But let me just run down what all 4 are so you know. The 3 big, there's actually technically maybe a fourth one. All right, the first 2 things are pretty simple. Most people know at least the first one, and that is it's the Capitol rally that got out of control. Not going to get into whether it was a false flag or not, okay, but just for whatever reason, people breached the Capitol and did things they shouldn't do, okay? It's partially about that. So they're going to do a lot. Again, if it bleeds, it leads. So since some people ended up, I understand for those of you out there following closely, the only person who was killed as a result of the rally was Ashley Babbitt, who happened to be a Trump supporter, but other people did die associated with it. So they're gonna lead with that, and they're gonna show you, and they're probably gonna bring a few guards in. So everybody knows about that. If you've been listening to this program, and most of you have from the beginning, you know that it's also about Trump's attempts to challenge Biden's certification in the Electoral College. That was going to happen on January 6th via the 12th Amendment and the Electoral Count Act of 1887. By the way, again, for those of you following closely, and I am, as you know, they are talking. Apparently, there are some rhinos that are joining with the Dems, and they're talking about modifying the Electoral Count Act of 1887. Haven't seen a sheet yet about what they're going to try to do, but I predict what they're going to try to do is basically try and eliminate it. Now, they can't do that because of the 12th Amendment. They really can't do it without an amendment, but again, who knows what these folks, they don't really follow the Constitution anymore. It's very difficult to think they've got some Republicans in on this, but we shall see. All right, what was the third thing? The third thing that you might see out of these hearings about January 6th is to try and frame Trump for incitement. Now, we've gone over Brandenburg versus Ohio before. If you look at what happened when he said, go, to the other side and peacefully and patriotically make your voice heard, they can't meet the incitement test. Incitement is an exception to your First Amendment rights. You do not have a right to incite violence. You just don't. Now, under Brandenburg, it has to be imminent, and it has to be, you're inciting imminent violence. Like right now, we're going to go burn down this building. And there has to be a nexus, a connection between what you say and the actual violence. You can't just say, you know what, I'm sick and tired of this, and we should just burn the whole thing down. That's not sufficiently indicative to be incitement, right? And so I don't believe they're going to be able to do it, but they're probably going to try, okay? And the fourth thing that they're going to do, and we've talked about this before, I don't think January 6th committee is so focused on this, but as you saw and we've covered in the past, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment provides that those who shall have engaged in insurrection are ineligible for state or federal office. Now, we've gone through that before, and it wouldn't surprise me if January 6th committee gets into that. Probably not going to get into it tonight. They'll probably touch on it, but that's the fourth thing they may try to do is to say, hey, look at the 14th Amendment, look at Section 3, and all these people who are engaged in the insurrection, therefore ineligible for office. So anyway, back where I started, if you go to our Substack page, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see this. The article is entitled, No, Trump Didn't Commit a Crime on January 6th. If you go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, which I recommend you do, we also have a video of that, basically the same article, that's going to walk you through it. So tonight you're going to probably see mostly about the violence, but they are also this is going to be primarily what they do. After tonight, they get the violent stuff out of the way. They're going to come in and they're going to try to say Trump tried to commit a coup. He tried an insurrection. And when you keep hearing about how close we came to losing our democracy, folks, this is what they're going to talk about. So we've been through it before, but it can't hurt to go through it real quickly again. I'm going to give you a very quickie version of this, and then we're going to move on to the other news of the day. Again, if you want a more detailed version, I recommend you go to GreatAmericanMail.substack.com. I've got about 4 or 5 articles about January 6th up there. And on YouTube, I've got, I think, 3 videos now, one of which has been seen several times. So you can get the basics in a little bit more detail there. But here's what January 6th was about. Okay, based on the election of 1800, where for the first time in our history, rather than having people run independently for president, you had people run as a ticket. So Jefferson and Burr ran as a ticket, and Adams, and goodness, I cannot remember who was the vice president. You'll forgive me. It doesn't matter. Anyway, Adams defeated Jefferson defeated Adams. It was a rematch of the second presidential election we'd had, and this time people were tired of Adams, much like the Federalists of those days were kind of the Democrats of the day, and the Jeffersonians or the Democratic Republicans were much the Republicans of this day. But anyway, they were tired of it, so they swept Jefferson in the office. They went to the Electoral College, and since for the first time they had been paired together, Jefferson and Burr got the same amount of votes. And the result of that was, who's going to be president? Well, the Federalists, who were upset about what had happened, right? They decided to throw their weight when the election got kicked to the House to Burr, just to be jerks about it, frankly. Anyway, long story short, eventually Alexander Hamilton, who was a Federalist, went over and said, look, guys, it isn't funny anymore. Come on. We all know Jefferson was supposed to be the president. We all know Burr was supposed to be the vice president. So come on, knock it off. And eventually, take 2. Thomas Jefferson became the third president of the United States of America. So after that, they said, hey, we got to fix this. So they came up with the 12th Amendment. I think it got ratified in 1804. Provides for a lot of things, but it provides for the orderly counting in the Electoral College. And the main thing it does is it says, hey, there's going to be a running for president and there's going to be a running for vice president. We're not going to blend it together, because before that, the Constitution provided that the person that finished second in the Electoral College would be the vice president. That's the way it used to work. Right, and then the president would be the person who finished first, obviously. Anyway, so there we are. Then several years later, after the Civil War, you had a lot of contentious elections. I mean, you think what's contentious now, imagine how contentious it was in around the time of the Civil War. So in several elections, 1876, 1872, some others, several states sent dueling electors, right? We're going to get to Rachel Maddow in a minute, and she acts like this is the most preposterous thing that's ever happened, but it's not. Anyway, so eventually Congress, by the power invested in it, based on the 12th Amendment, came up with the Electoral Count Act of 1887. The Electoral Count Act of 1887 has a procedure whereby the states are called in alphabetical order. This is all laid out in the act, called in alphabetical order. So I think Arizona goes first. And if you have an objection, you have to have a senator sign on. You have to have a congressperson sign on. And if they object, you retire to the chambers and you debate. Okay. Trump's plan, in a nutshell, was to send alternate electors from 7 states, much like they'd done in the 1800s, all right, and have the Electoral College, presided over by Mike Pence, debate and debate and debate. They're using the word debate. There's some debate about what he really thought Pence could do, okay? Because we don't have any journalism and because we haven't gotten anybody really digging into this, no one's really figured out exactly what the plan was. But it appears that they were either hoping that either Pence would take some extraordinary action or the debate would just go on so long that eventually the House would have to vote. That's eventually that's what we all know. And if you read that article or if you watch the video, that's the short version. I do a little bit longer if I do that. Now, here's the important thing for the January 6th committee. Folks, we've known about this since November of 2020. Right? The plan was known. Trump not only didn't hide it, Eastman gave it to reporters at CNN. And if you go read the articles, you'll get this stuff, and y'all give you cites to it as well. They gave it to people. They knew. And here's another reason they knew, and that cues us up to our friend Rachel Maddow. This is Rachel Maddow from December of last year. Take a listen.
The meeting of the real electors was happening inside the state capitol. Fake electors were also meeting elsewhere in the same state capitol at the same time on the same day. Quote, an hour after the Wisconsin Supreme Court affirmed Joe Biden as the winner of the November 3rd presidential election in Wisconsin, Wisconsin Republicans refused to accept the result and met at the state capitol to put forward their own slate of electors, while 10 Democratic electors met inside Governor Tony Evers' office to finalize the state's 10 electoral votes for President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. Republicans convened to cast votes for President Donald Trump. What do you mean cast votes? The details on this are amazing. In Wisconsin,
now let me stop her here real quick. We've played this before, but this is December of last year. Okay. Now tonight, the January 6th committee is going to act like what I just laid out to you that Trump was going to challenge by again having alternate electors from 7 swing states, including Wisconsin. Right? Oh, this is bombshell breaking news, and I'm going to cover that in a minute because they've been doing this for a while now. But anyway, they knew. Again, Rachel Maddow here, over 6 months ago, she knew. She went on. This is prime time. She went on and did it. And in a minute, you're going to see that they knew much earlier than that, but she'll continue.
Did it privately, and I kid you not, they forged all the paperwork to make it seem like they were the real electors. Look, we have the paperwork that they forged. Look, certificate of the votes of the 2020 electors from Wisconsin. We, the undersigned, being the duly and qualified.
All right, folks, I've done this before. I can't help myself. She's just so annoying. Folks, you're not doing something in secret when you sign the documents and then mail them in, right? There's nothing secretive about this. Everybody knew what was going on. And again, there's no secret because you're doing it in December. And I'm looking, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the date there. December 14th of 2020. They did it. The CNN was told. Everybody was told. If you go read the articles, I think I quote an article from the New York Times or the Washington Post. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. They knew about it. Everybody knew about it. This isn't a breaking story in December of 2021. Wouldn't have been a breaking story in December of 2020. Everybody knew about it. And this whole, they're fake electors and they're forged. No, they're not. They're alternate electors. And again, there's precedence for this. This has happened before. But folks, that is a sneak preview of what you're going to see tonight. That's what the January 6th committee is going to spend at least a portion of tonight. And I think after they get rid of the blood and gore, that's what they're going to do. I think they're holding 9 hearings, 8, somewhere in there. I think a majority of them will be about this quote-unquote coup. right? Anyway, we shall see. But the trick here, and again, I've been following this area closely. I wanted to do this. That's part of the reason I got the YouTube thing up and going, is that I wanted to be able to live stream January 6th. And so I'm well up to verse, and I've read a lot about this. And one of the scams that the media continues to do as it relates to January 6th, but not just January 6th, Clarence Thomas and Jenny Thomas are doing the same scam. What they'll do is they've known about this since 2020. And what they do is some new tranche of documents or some new witness who gets interviewed or deposed by the committee or somewhere else, they'll say, oh, yeah, I knew about that. Oh, sure, yeah, I recommended to the president that he send alternate collectors from Georgia and from Wisconsin and Michigan. So when this new witness comes, they all in line, like a gaggle of ducks. They all in line go, oh, breaking news, President Trump undermined coup, insurrection. When it's very well simply laid out, he was trying to challenge the election in the Electoral College. That's all it was. And it's not really breaking news at all. But so anyway, that's what you're going to see tonight. If you want to, again, go to our pages and you'll get some more information. So let's get back to the president. Again, it's just ironic. Yesterday, McConaughey's at the White House and the president's on Jimmy Kimmel. But anyway, so President Biden, we covered this yesterday, and this is, again, gaslighting is something the left is, that they're very good at it. And unfortunately now, because they have such a tremendous reach, and they've basically done a couple things very well over the last couple decades, really since Barack Obama, they've done it. And again, I hate to say it, but it's true. I mean, they have done it well. They've completely taken over, and the media has gotten completely left wing, and simultaneously the followers of this, they no longer think. You can't rationalize anything with these people. They just take marching orders, and it doesn't have to make any sense. I say it all the time. They'll contradict themselves within the same page, the same paragraph, oftentimes within the same sentence. Now, folks, you are not using your noggin if that's what happens. You're just not. But one of the things that, and I've said this before, but you can't say it too much, with Biden, they've now added on another layer of what they're able to do, right? So they've got complete control of the legacy media, the mainstream media, whatever you want to call it. They've got the reach. They control what we talk about. They talk how we talk about it, right? They censor people. They get angry that there are voices like this even out there. You shouldn't even be able to, you shouldn't even be able to, if you take 5 or 10 hours to go onto Google and hear Trump say peacefully and patriotically. Folks, they've memory hold that. I've looked for it several times. And in fact, if somebody who's listening can find that, I would really appreciate it. Email me at publius@gamcast.net, Publius, publius@gamcast.net, and send it to me, or tell me where I can get it, or comment on YouTube or comment on Twitter where I can find that, because they have memory hold it. If you look for that Trump speech, and I thought about doing it today, but there was no point, you can't find that point where he said peacefully and patriotically, and that's what they do. They get away with things like that. But Biden, for them, represents one other quote-unquote victory from their point of view. At least with Obama, you had to have, what is it Biden said, a young, clean-cut, African-American man, well-spoken, it's a storybook man or something like that. I mean, at least then you had to have sort of a charismatic leader. You got to have somebody with some charm or some ability to speak or something exceptional. If you'll notice, you go back and you look at leftist leaders throughout history. I mean, in fact, I thought about doing this today, the old Saturday Night Live bit, where they were mocking President Carter, and they had Dan Aykroyd do it. Well, the mocking President Carter would give a show where he was a genius. People would call in, and President Carter could speak about Iran, Iraq, the Soviet Union. He could tell you exactly what was wrong with your refrigerator. He could tell you how to reprogram it was just amazing. That's what they did. And so, and Jimmy Carter was a very intelligent guy. I mean, he still is a very intelligent guy. But in Barack Obama, he had his star power and all that. But with Biden, they've gone one step further. Now they can literally have a potted plant who can't even speak, even on puff interviews like you're about to hear, and nobody seems to care. And again, folks, the reason that's important is they now know, oh, wow, so we don't even need to go find a Barack Obama. We can just get a fossil like Biden, and he can put a lid on it at noon and not really run for president, and we'll get him over the finish line. If anybody questions it, we'll shut it down, and then he can just go on shows and look like an imbecile, and nobody will care. So anyway, here's Biden on Kimmel. Take a listen.
So there's a lot of major things we've done. But what we haven't done is we haven't been able to communicate it in a way that is Let me say it another way.
Well, see, that's kind of perfect. Yeah,
Well,
we haven't been able to communicate
But
it.
look how the press has changed.
All right, so he's basically claiming, "Woe is me." We read this article, I think last week. Woe is me, woe is me. It's not really. It's terrible. We look at the way the environment is. It's rigged against me. Even though he gets some of. I mean, I've never seen anybody. And I thought Obama got fawning coverage. I mean, Biden almost gets better coverage than Biden. I mean, Biden almost gets better coverage than Obama. It's amazing. So he's whining about that. So then he continues. So he's talking now about messaging is the problem. It's not his policies, of course. He continues.
Look how the press has changed.
It has changed. Oh, listen, I get it.
I know you overstand it.
Yeah.
You don't just understand it, you overstand it.
Overstand it. What
But here's the
is that
deal.
English?
One of the things is that it's very difficult now to have even with notable exceptions, even the really good reporters, they have to get the number of clicks on nightly news. Mm-hmm. So instead of asking a question, anyway, it's just everything.
So I'm going to let him continue, and then he got about 15 seconds. We'll be done with him. But folks, you see these press conferences. Do you see anybody trying to get clicks? Do you see the people that are on the left, which is basically everybody but Peter Doocy, at those briefings? Do you think they're trying to get clicks, asking him tough questions? I mean, these people live in a dream world. They literally live in a dream world. That doesn't exist. It never happens. I mean, it's insane. I mean, the other problem is, and we've gone through this before, they don't have any ratings, Mr. President. They don't. Nobody watches CNN. Ben Shapiro, the reason they hate people like Ben Shapiro and they hate people like Joe Rogan is because they get the ratings. They can't stand the fact that they can't get ratings. Now, if they wanted to, what they could do is actually practice journalism and their ratings would probably triple overnight. But they're not going to do that. So they're not motivated by profit anymore. I've pointed that out several times. They're not motivated by money. If they were, they would have, kept Trump in office, and they also at least would start acting like rational people so people would tune in. But nobody tunes in. But anyway, let him finish and then we'll move on.
Gets sensationalized in ways but I'm convinced we can get through this. We have to get through it. And one of the things, look,
I'm going to take a break, and then we'll talk a little bit more, if you don't
blame
mind.
you.
I'm sorry. We have some of those commercials. We have some biracial commercials we need to show.
Okay, I'm not really sure what the biracial commercials are about. But anyway, all right, some more news out there. So we say all the time, about the Democrats, and they don't live in reality. And it really is a problem for them and just about everyone else in the world. So it's also a problem for us. So we're going to get now to Joey Behar at The View. And, I'm a lawyer. Take two. It's a second flub of the day there. All right. I'm licensed to practice law in Florida and Georgia. All right. And so there's an old saying in the law. I do litigation. There's an old saying in law, in the litigation, right? If the facts are on your side, you argue the facts. If the law is on your side, you argue the law. If the law and the facts aren't on your side, you pound the table. And it basically means you go with what you have best. And if you don't have anything, make a lot of noise and just try to be loud, and maybe people will, rule for your client, right? And so one of the things that's interesting about people like Joey Behar and The View, you have to understand they don't have the law and they don't have the facts, right? And so to some extent they pound the table, and that is they just say provocative things that don't really make any sense, right? So that's one point. And that could be the bit I'm about to play for you. That may explain what she does here. That's one possible answer. I say all the time, some of them are just playing and doing make-believe, and some of them actually believe it. Joey Behar is of the age, I would think she's just acting here and acting like she believes this, but she lives in such a bubble, and a lot of these leftists live in such a bubble that they don't know. And let me tell you a story that happened to me just a couple of days ago that makes this point. So I was over at my golf club, and I used to work out there in addition to playing golf. Now I only pretty much play golf there because all the social media I'm doing and my practice is kind of busy right now. So I don't really have the time, and it would take me about 15 minutes to get there. So I joined a gym where it takes me about 5 minutes, which saves me 20 minutes ingress, egress, 20 minutes per workout. I work out about 7 days a week, right? So now we're talking about 140 minutes, right? Which is, 2 hours and 20 minutes. That's a lot. Every week, you multiply that by 50, and you do the thing. I'm a big efficiency person. So anyway, so I don't run into this person I used to run into a lot, okay? And, I hadn't seen him in a while. He asked me what's going on. I tell you, how are you doing? All the small talk. And at some point, I said we were talking about the gym, and one of the problems at the gym at my golf club is they turn the TVs off at night and then they don't turn them back on in the morning. So if you come in there, and it's a really complicated process. And so we were remarking about the fact, how is it that at some places, they just run like clockwork, and in other places they don't. Anyway, so at some point I was like, I don't really care much about the TV. I don't watch cable news. And he goes, yeah, I make it a point to turn off Fox everywhere I see it. And I just let it go. I mean, we've never had a political discussion, and he had no reason to know that I wouldn't be offended by Fox. But therein lies the point. I mean, I've known this person for a couple of years at this club, probably almost a decade, right? And we've had various conversations about golf and working out and life. We've never, again, discussed politics. But notice, in his mind, and he's probably, I'm 54, I'll be 54 in July. He's probably 70, early 70s, late 60s, and it didn't even occur to him that anybody would ever watch Fox, right? It just couldn't even be contemplated by him. Anyway, here's Joey Behar, same point. You make up your mind what you think it is. Take a listen.
Most AR-15 owners are former military,
Okay.
35 plus
Let me say
married.
one more
So
thing.
that's all I'm saying is that they're not just crazy people.
Okay. Here's the thing. Once black people get guns in this country, the gun laws will change. Trust me.
That's what happened.
Now, anyway, all the View there, the people on the View, they all clap for this. Again, folks, Joey Behar, she may live in a universe where she thinks that a black person can't go down and buy a firearm. I mean, besides being against illegal, right, in this country, you cannot deny public accommodations based on race of this kind. I mean, could you imagine if there's actually a gun show this weekend I'm probably going to go to in Gwinnett, which is a county a couple over I'll probably go to. But, and every time I go to them, because we're in a metro area where it's about 50% black, about 50% white, and you go to the gun shows and pretty much the same ratio goes in there. And I see black people all the time. In fact, the last time I went to one right after Biden was elected president, so I guess it would have been January of last year. And I mean, I couldn't count on every body part I have how many black people I saw sitting down filling out that form so they could get a firearm. It's just insanity. And again, if it were happening, the media would be covering it. But in Joey Behar's world, and you heard her audience, they all clap for that. So that's when the gun laws are going to change, when black people. And again, I don't know how those black people in Chicago are murdering all these people left and right and all these other Democrat cities, but I'm pretty sure somehow they're getting their hands on guns, and I'm pretty sure Republicans aren't saying anything about it. But anyway, so a couple other stories you need to know about, and these are very, very important stories. So you may have heard, in fact, let me pull up the climate change nut here. Okay, so this is Dr. Leah Stokes. Let's pull her up here. She is a professor of climate and energy policy. It looks like at USSB. I don't know where that is. Maybe Columbia. I can't figure out. Anyway, so she is very excited. Today, POTUS took bold steps to support American energy manufacturing. He invoked the Defense Production Act and declared national emergencies based on climate to solve a solar problem. Want to understand today's big climate policy announcement? A thread. So then she goes into the thread, and so a thread in Twitter is when you have one tweet and then you link a bunch of other tweets under it. So we'll just go down a little bit. Today, the DPA announced supports manufacturing in 5 clean technologies: heat pumps, solar, insulation, clean energy, grid stability, yada, yada, yada. So I went over, and again, if you're on YouTube, you're looking at this stuff right now as I am. So this is the president fact sheet. President Biden takes bold executive action to spur domestic clean energy manufacturing. Interesting. Okay. All right. So he is the bold action here is invoking the Defense Production Act. So if you scroll down a little ways, authorize use of Defense Production Action to accelerate domestic production of clean energy technologies, including solar panel parts. Now, we talked about the Defense Production Act a couple weeks ago. Do you remember what we were talking about? We were talking about the baby formula shortage. Now, I did not agree at that time that this is something the president can do unilaterally. The Defense Production Act is for wartime emergencies. And I'm not going to say it couldn't be others. I mean, potentially if there were an earthquake or, a historic flood or something like that, maybe. Okay. But this is the second time now the president of the United States, again, unprecedentedly, by the way, has invoked the Defense Production Act. Now, this is why this is such a serious problem, folks. The first time, at least with the baby formula shortage, I think pretty much everybody in the United States of America were like, if there's a baby formula shortage, yeah, we probably should do something about it. Not all Americans agree with this climate nonsense, okay, me being one of them. Now, here's the other big problem. The act has a lot of power. Essentially, the government can basically nationalize industries. Well, he can't technically nationalize industries, but he can go in and he can tell you what to make and what not to make. So in this case, he's going to go in and tell certain companies that they have to make solar panels and other things having to do with clean energy, right? So let's go back to reading what he says here. And I'm going to tell you, it's a problem right there for the Constitution. No one person should have that kind of power, and it should repulse Americans that Biden is routinely instituting this. It really should, but it's not. And again, you probably didn't even hear about it unless you're listening to this podcast, all right? So what else is it going to do? Well, he says, and this is according to his release, put the full power of the federal government to work, spurring additional domestic solar manufacturing capacity by directing the development of master supply agreements, including super preferences statuses. Create a 24-month bridge as domestic manufacturing scales up to ensure the reliability of supply of components that U.S. solar planners need to construct clean energy projects and an electric grid for the 24th century while reinforcing the integrity of our trade laws. Together, these actions will spur domestic manufacturing, well, of course, because you're going to direct it, construction projects, and good-paying jobs, all while cutting energy costs for families, strengthen our grid, blah, blah, blah. Now, folks, I'm going to take a bone of contention here. How is it going to cut your energy costs? Now, I want you to think about that. His argument is, well, if we create all this solar energy, right, there'll be more energy, and that would, in theory, increase the supply of energy. And if it increases the supply of energy, right, then energy should go down. Now, I'm not going to sit here. I don't have time today to go into why that's not going to work. And the reason it's largely not going to work is that these technologies aren't ready yet. In other words, if you were to go and drill more oil, I would absolutely agree with that analysis. When you're talking about creating more solar panels, right, when we don't know how they're going to work, how well they're going to store electricity, we don't know they don't work when the sun shines, all these different things. It's questionable whether you're going to get a one-on-one translation of increased energy, right? But here's the problem, and here's the trump card I have to beat him. And by that, I mean like the ace of spades, okay? Here's the problem, folks. Yeah, even if it arguably would increase the amount of energy out there, which it won't because it's not a very efficient method of producing it, but even if it would, you're now taking companies that are doing things that aren't having to do with green energy. You're forcing them to engage in green energy. Therefore, whatever else they were doing, isn't going to be on the market. So all he's doing is robbing Peter to pay Paul, even assuming it increases the amount of energy out there, which probably will not, right? All it's going to do is maybe lower your energy bill a little bit, but whatever else you were buying, it's going to cost you more to buy it, right? So that's what's going on here. And again, this little professor lady that's celebrating this and yay, and she's insane. She thinks the world's going to end and we got to go to the green energy. So she celebrates this. And there's one other component of this I want you to understand. And I'm going to get to the last story I've got. Make sure it's the last story. Yes, I got the last story. I'm going to get to that. It's going to make this point for you really crystal clear. But before I do that, get to that last point, I want you to understand that what this is really about is satisfying his wacky, crazy left-wing base about the climate, right, which is not in crisis. And I'm not even trying to debate global warming at this point, right? In other words, even if you're assuming global warming exists, even if you assume that humans are in part the cause of global warming, it's not a crisis level. It's something that we will work our way and we will figure it out in the years to come. But these people act like, you saw the lady a couple days ago that had a shirt on. She chained herself to a tennis match and said 1,028 days to go. We got more than that. But the real gambit here is that Biden is also rewarding his friends out there. So if you're in the solar industry, right, or you're somehow in the green industry, you just got a lot of cash. And now he's going to force companies to do this stuff. So they're going to make a lot of money. And they're going to get government contracts, right? And I wonder, I'm just curious, does anybody know where the green energy people, where they send their money? Does anybody know which political party they tend to donate to? I mean, this is just theft out in the open. Well, there's one other problem with the green energy stuff, and we all know what it is, but it's interesting. A lot of people don't know what it is, and I'm going to go ahead and spoil it, but I'm going to play this bit for you. And before I do that, though, let me go ahead and spoil it. In order for a lot of these industries to work, you have to first produce electricity, right? So take, for example, electric cars. People go, electric cars, electric cars, electric cars. Okay, fine. How do you get the electricity, right? And so what you end up finding is these smug people that go around driving electric cars. And I have nothing against electric cars. I'm told, I mean, every friend I know and clients, they tell me the Tesla is just incredible. And they say, get one if you can. I'm not against the electric car at all. No, I mean, I'm fine with it. But don't misunderstand that the electricity that you use is being produced by fossil fuel. So you're not actually helping the environment, at least not right now you aren't. Anyway, so this would come to news, you would think. This would not come as news to people who are in the industry, but apparently it did. So here's a bit that's been making around the internet. This is the GM. She's the CEO, I think, and she's out there discussing GM's efforts with the electric car. Take a listen.
I'm really grateful to be here today, and in fact, this is a chance for me to say thank you more formally. The Chevy Bolt is upstairs. We'll be able to take a look at it. We've got about 1,000 photos.
Yeah. Is it plug? It's as simple as that.
The batteries are in the trunk?
No, the battery in this particular design is a T shape right down the center and across the back seat area. Because everybody thought we killed the electric vehicle. No, we didn't. It's alive and well.
So what's charging the batteries right now? What's the source of
Well, here.
electricity?
It's coming from the building.
I mean, is it, what's their mix of power?
Oh, actually, Lansing feeds the building.
What's that?
Lansing feeds power to the building. So I don't know.
So she's been asked, okay, we saw your electric vehicle. We saw you plug it in. Oh, the building's supplying the power. Okay, who gets it? Oh, I'm not really sure where the building gets it. So he goes to Lansing to figure out where Lansing gets the energy for the building. And here it comes.
I bet you they're a bit of coal. They're heavy on natural gas, aren't they?
Coal or natural gas?
Charging off of your grid?
Right. It would be charging off our grid, which is about 95% coal.
There you have it, folks. 95% coal. So you burn coal to produce electricity to power the car, right? Coal is much dirtier than ways in which that you can get the car around if you had the traditional method. But again, folks, the underlying point here, the underlying point is that so many of their policies don't make any sense at all, but they don't have to, right? I mean, these people are not going to stop with this, and this is the sad part. They're not going to stop with it. They're going to continue. And now that they've got Biden in the White House, he's now instituting the Defense Production Act to accelerate this nonsense, accelerate going to these types of energy that aren't ready yet. Now, folks, that would be one thing. Okay, listen, folks, again, we prefer clarity on the Great American Mail to agreement. We don't have to agree, but let's be clear, all right? You're doing it now, and you're doing it at an accelerated rate. It's not ready, so we're going to have disruptions. It's going to be costly. There's going to be inflation. Just be honest about it, and then people can move forward with their lives. But no. That's not going to be the case. They're going to do it. They're going to enrich themselves in the process, and then here you heard them. It's going to create jobs, and it's going to save you money, all of which is a lie. So anyway, you are now all caught up to date on the news of the day. If you liked this podcast, live stream, whatever it is, however you're getting it, tell a friend, tell lots of friends. Give us comments, reviews, clip it, share it, all that good stuff. And if you enjoyed the show, I hope you tune back in tomorrow.